Meeting to order. And so this is a continuation of our meeting last week. I'd like to thank everyone for joining us. As we hear the 2025 budget, Philippine Postal Corporation, the Commission Overseas Filipinos Overseas, and the Philippine Space Agency. Last week, we heard and approved the budget of the DOST. And today, we will hear the presentation of the Philippine Space Agency, which I hope will include the agency's contribution to our country's disaster monitoring and risk reduction efforts, which is very relevant today. We're also going to hear the CFO's presentation and hopefully learn about or more about their programs and services to remain vital for the Filipino migrants in this globalized age. And for PhilPost, we want to know if I know that they technically do not receive allocation from the NEP, but we have invited them today to ask them to present their request for compensation for the franking privileges extended to government agencies. We'll make a push for that, but we'll also need your explanation. So when I'm asked in the plenary, we can explain it, of course, to our colleagues. With that, let us get on to the hearing and start with the presentations. Maraming salamat. We'll start off first with, we'll ask first the COMSEC to recognize all those that are here. Madam.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. For the Commission on Filipino Overseas, we have Secretary Romulo Arugay, together with Marita Apatad, Attorney Alma Rayandoyan Ali, Ms. Janet Ramos, Rodrigo Garcia Jr., Michael Apatad, Evangelina Pomuceno, Engineer Romeo Rosas II, Gracial Paginto, Candelario Garcia, Attorney Alma Ali, January Daniel Sanchez, Mayvel Peñano, Kathleen Ann Elaine Basa, Carila Raza, and Kevin Ladi. For the Philippine Postal Corporation, we have Postmaster General and CEO Luis Carlos, together with Attorney Lori Ann Atal, Gladys Remo, Carol Terrado, Attorney Lee Viceral, Marcos Ryan Laurente. For the Philippine Space Agency, we have Director General Dr. Joel Joseph Marciano Jr., together with Deputy Director General Gay Jane Perez, Dennis Villorente, Mark Cesar Talampas, Ariel Blanco, Rolando Martinez, Noel Risa Castillo, Rosel Nino Vicente, Jenaline Garjano, and Jezel Zhao. For the Department of Budget and Management for PhilSA and Philippine Postal Corporation, we have Mr. John Ray Castillo and Ms. Marisol Joan Cacao. For the Department of Budget and Management for Commission on Filipino Overseas, we have Ms. Marcel Dizon, together with Aroma De Terra, Clean Carmel Divina Gracia. For the Commission on Audit for Philippine Space Agency, we have Ms. Sherry Lou Arguilla, together with Ms. Joanna May Canadalia. And for Commission on Foreign Filipinos, for Commission on Filipino Overseas, Ms. Claiborne Joy Molina, together with Queenie Mago. That's all, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Madam COMSEC. May we proceed now with the hearing at hand. On my schedule, it is the Philippine Space Agency. Is it how do you pronounce PhilSA? PhilSA. To differentiate you from the PSA, which is a very sought after agency now in the hearing and the other side. But PhilSA, would you like to make a presentation, Doctor? Yes, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, Senator Miggs. Our presentation is shown there on the display. We are presenting the Philippine Space Agency, or PhilSA's financial year 2025 budget. The title of this presentation is Yamang Kalawakan. Mr. Chair, we devised and adopted this term to refer to the collective resources of our country, the people, institutions, infrastructure, policies, and environment in space science and technology and applications that comprise our country's capabilities in space. In other words, Mr. Chair, this represents our emergent domestic space ecosystem. And through Yamang Kalawakan, we want to create value in space through the space value chain. May I now go to the next slide? A quick background on the Philippine Space Agency. Next slide, please. Thank you. Thank you. Republic Act 11363, or the Philippine Space Act, signed into law on August 8, 2019, established the Philippine Space Policy and the Philippine Space Agency. PhilSA is the central government agency in the country addressing all national issues and activities in space science and technology applications, or SSTA. We are attached to the Office of the President of the Philippines. So there is a common misconception, Mr. Chair, about us being also attached to the DOST, but we are, in fact, under the OP. This is for purposes of policy and program coordination and to ensure alignment in national policies and priorities. There is a Philippine Space Council that was created also under the same act, and it is chaired by the President of the Philippines. The vice chairs are the Secretary of Science and Technology and Secretary of National Defense, and members from the legislature include the Senate and committee chairs of the Science and Technology Committee. The Director General of PhilSA holds the rank of a Cabinet Secretary and serves as the Presidential Advisor for Space Matters. Mr. Chair, our President is keenly aware of our space program. In fact, in 2022, during the UN General Assembly, he mentioned the following, and I quote, "The Philippines is preparing for the future by laying the governance framework that will allow us to pursue digital solutions towards a more modern economy and expand our presence in outer space." He went on to add further that we need to start by defining the norms of responsible behavior in cyberspace and outer space. So we took these words to heart, Mr. Chair. This is a directive from the President in implementing our space program. Now, finally, in this slide, in the Philippine Space Policy, the framework of the policy dictates there are 6 key development areas. These are essentially the areas which our space science and technology applications are intended to develop and serve. Number 1, national security and development. Number 2, hazard management and climate studies. Number 3, space industry capacity building. We also have space R&D, space education and awareness, and international cooperation. Now we go to the next slide. During the recent State of the Nation address of the President, we were very thankful that the President acknowledged our fledgling space program with the following words, and I should read. "Since the nation's foray into space technology, our satellites in space have generated more than 51,000 maps, images, and spaceborne data for various purposes. These now provide us with vital information that guides our country's stratagems and decision-making in agricultural development, urban planning, and environmental management, including the strengthening of our maritime domain awareness, to name but a few examples." If you click on that, please. The President also mentioned the ongoing work on our multispectral unit for land assessment satellite, and he mentioned the following, quote, "As we speak, 16 of our space engineers are in the United Kingdom, resuming work on the development of the MULA satellite. Once completed, the MULA satellite will be our largest Earth observation satellite to be launched into space so far. May they inspire the next generation of Filipino students to follow in their footsteps and reach for the stars," end quote. Next slide. The President speaks of the many benefits that space technology brings to our archipelagic maritime nation, Mr. Chair. And so, to add further context, perhaps a global perspective, we show here the global space economy, currently valued at around $500 billion, according to some estimate, growing at, according to some estimates, 8% per year, and is projected to grow to $1 trillion economy by 2030. The components of this global space economy are 2. Number 1, the upstream. Number 2, the downstream. Upstream refers to everything that goes up there, Mr. Chair, the satellites, the infrastructure that brings them up there, such as rockets and spaceports, and other infrastructure that keep them up there, such as ground receiving stations and antennas, etc. This accounts for a smaller percentage of the global space economy, about roughly 10%, 56 billion, but it is rapidly growing. There are about 9,000 satellites in low Earth orbit right now, Mr. Chair, and more than half of that is owned by one company alone. It's a recent explosion in the past decade of an economy in low Earth orbit. Now, when we put satellites in space, of course, we derive services from them. We use them, and that's the downstream. So the applications include Earth observation, basically taking pictures of our planet, for telecommunications, navigation, positioning, timing, and also for weather forecasting and the internet. And there are value-add services such as AI, computing, decision support systems. This accounts for a majority of the global space economy. So, Mr. Chair, the burgeoning global space economy inspires and motivates this agency and our country to build and strengthen the domestic space ecosystem that can seize and leverage opportunities for deriving socioeconomic benefit and value from national space capabilities. Next slide. And so thus our vision is a nation bridged, uplifted, and empowered through the peaceful uses of outer space. And our mission is to promote and sustain a robust Philippine space ecosystem that adds and creates value in space para sa Pilipino, mula sa Pilipino, at para sa mundo. Next slide. Mr. Chair, when we present the National Space Program, we use this strategic framework, the space value chain. Basically, it's a chain consists of components and their nexus, which when present and interacting effectively can lead to socioeconomic benefit and value at the end. So you see that in that diagram, the 5 components and then socioeconomic value and benefit. The components are as follows: satellites and upstream infrastructure. Number 2, data and services being suitably accessible. Number 3, ground infrastructure for downloading and hosting data. Number 4, capacity to analyze and generate insights. Number 5, the valley of death, the impetus and resources to act, and leading to socioeconomic benefit and value realization. So the question is, Mr. Chair, when we propose the National Space Program, we want to build commensurate strength in each block of this chain. We want to build on current strengths. We want to identify and fill gaps, identify priorities, and leverage private sector engagement and international cooperation in order to build strength across the chain and create value for Filipinos. This framework allows us to communicate more tangibly our work at the Space Agency and its relevance to a country like the Philippines. That the Space Agency is not just for big, perhaps more advanced countries, but every country, big or small, has an ambition, has an aspiration, and that includes building infrastructure and capabilities in the space domain. Supporting the space value chain are activities in R&D, education and capacity building, public outreach, policy planning, and international cooperation. Next slide. And so thus, Mr. Chair, we map our PAPs to the space value chain. Shown here are 4 PAPs. Number 1, growing the domestic space economy and industry. Number 2, mobilizing space data for national security, maritime domain awareness, and economic development. Number 3, advancing the capacity and quality of research and education in SSTA or acquires. Number 4, advancement and promotion of Philippine policy and programs in space. Number 5, we propose hosting the 31st session of the Asia Pacific Regional Space Agency Forum. So guided by that strategic framework, these programs are therefore mapped to the space value chain. So we are more targeted with these programs and we address the gaps and build on current strengths. Next slide. This is the summary of our proposed budget for 2025, broken down in terms of personnel services, MOE and CO. For 2025, we proposed a budget of 1.535496 billion. In the NEP is 924,776,000. So there is a decrease of 610,720,000, percentage of which is 39.77%. While this is a reduction of our original proposal, PhilSon nevertheless remains grateful for the support of the DBM in the growing requirements of the agency. Next slide. And so embedded in the Philippine... Yes.
Maybe so that I don't lose my train of thought, when you're explaining things, I'll ask questions already.
Yes,
in between. Yeah, why was there such a big drop, drastic cut on your budget from last year to this year? I think how many 30%, no? Where is the 39%? 39, almost 40% drop. So in other words, your proposal was 1.5 billion. The NEP was approved by the DBM was 924 million. And last year, what was your budget last year, Your Honor? Yeah, sorry, this year, 2024.
Now 1.944 billion, Mr. Chair.
So from 1.9 billion, 1.944 billion, I just noticed this today. So 1.9 billion, your which was approved by the budget, is that NEP, was that augmented by Congress, or that was totally NEP approved and just carried over
There was augmentation, Mr. Chair,
from Congress?
from Congress,
Was it from the Senate or from the House?
from the Senate. Mr. Chair.
So what was your NEP last year?
The augmentation, less the augmentation of 200 million, so that would be 1.7.
1.7 B. Okay. I just want to understand why was there a what was your budget utilization for this year or last year? Were you 70%?
Mr. Chair, yes. For this year, Mr. Chair, it's as of June 30 po ito, 74% as of June mid-year.
There must be a reason why they dropped drastically your budget. Was there a program that you had installed this year? No, I'm just trying to figure that out because they're going to ask me in the floor. Why was there a drastic drop from your budget this year to next year? Usually it's budget utilization or the lack of utilizing it, and it's not an efficient use of funds. So the DBM always checks the budgets of the different agencies to see how they utilize their expenditure, budget expenditure. So if it's not that you had this year, which deemed the DBM not giving you the same amount.
Mr. Chair, I can explain. Well, when the Mula satellite, our requirement for this year is higher compared to next year. So that accounts for the drop. So I don't think it's attributed to utilization or in that way, but simply because our major flagship program, the development of the satellite, simply requires less this year compared to next year. Sorry, next year compared to this year. So that accounts for major.
What is the what's the status of this Mula satellite? Do we already launch this, or is it being developed or built?
It is currently being developed, Mr. Chair. We just passed the critical design review. That means the design is completely fixed now. Our next milestone, this month we have an implementation readiness review. So we have 16 engineers in the UK working with British engineers in an industrial setting. We are on track for a launch by first quarter of 2026, Mr. Chair.
Being built. So it's being built in the UK.
In the
Together
UK, Mr. Chair.
with your people,
Yes,
with
Mr.
the
Chair.
engineers. Okay. And what is the function of the Mula satellite?
It is an Earth observation satellite weighing 130 kilograms. It carries a camera that takes pictures of the Earth at different colors or wavelengths. So it's used to observe agriculture and bodies of water as well. And also can be used to address the aftermath of typhoons, when we do flood maps, etc. So it takes pictures, Mr. Chair, not just of our country, because it goes around the Earth. It takes pictures of other countries as well. And quite important is that we are not just buying it, we're building it together, and we acquire a license to remanufacture the satellite in country the next time around. So this is part of our industrial strategy to build up local companies here to be part of the global space supply chain, Mr. Chair.
So Doc, but this can, so when you say you can take pictures of other countries, so we can remotely control the satellite. Is that correct?
Yes, Mr. Chair, we operate it ourselves. That in one sense makes us spacefaring because this is infrastructure that we operate ourselves. We determine what it does and we program it using our ground stations. And then when it goes to an intended area, it just automatically executes the command that we upload and it takes pictures. When it passes by our country again, we can download it, Of course, we can cooperate with other countries in terms of downloading the data as well, so that we have more frequency of downloads. But we can also offer this to other countries in terms of sharing infrastructure. If they have a satellite that we need, then we can have some kind of arrangement where we can use each other's infrastructure. So it opens doors for our country, Mr. Chair.
And so when you remotely operate the satellite, it'll be at your headquarters. Where's the headquarters? I'm not familiar with the headquarters of PhilScience.
Currently, our offices are in the 29th floor of Cyber One building in Eastwood, Mr. Chair, but we just signed an agreement with BCDA to start building our headquarters in Clark as dictated by the Philippine Space Act. We should be in New Clark, Clark Special Economic Zone. But our ground station, we have two of them that were transferred to us by DOST. The one in Davao near the airport, International Airport, is our largest one, and the one in Quezon City in the UP Diliman, within the DOST ASTI building, Mr. Chair.
I saw a number of satellites here on your presentation. There are several here that are actually have launched already. What's the status of all these other satellites, Your Honor?
So there have been 8 satellites produced. These were before PhilSA, Mr. Chair, funded by DOST. We were involved in this program as program leaders prior to PhilSA. Only one is remaining in orbit, and that is Diwata 2. It's still taking pictures. Mr. Chair, we still operate it. And so soon it will be followed. Currently under development is Maya 7, a CubeSat that is being built by university students and a university consortium. And it has a camera, it has a radio, and also we're building Mula as mentioned. So we will have two satellites in the pipeline at the moment, Mr. Chair. So,
No, please proceed. With your presentation.
we were at this slide. So in the Philippine space policy, it says our central goal is to become a spacefaring, space-capable nation. And first of all, spacefaring means sovereign satellites for the country, because we cannot fare in space if other countries do the faring for us. That means at the minimum, some countries define that you have astronauts, Mr. Chair, or you have rockets of your own. But in our definition, it's enough that we are able to control infrastructure in a sovereign way in space, and that's through our satellites. And how about space-capable nation? That means at the end of the day, having industrial space capabilities. Whatever know-how that comes from the universities, from the space agency, must cascade to Filipino companies who can build components that are space qualified and face the global market. So that's our target. You see here in the diagram, Mr. Chair, as we continue to build satellites, we're trying to increase the local content. These are inputs of small and medium enterprises in the Philippines. If they build products for Earth, like solar panels, electronics, semiconductors, we can use them for satellites, and it can open a new market for them. Let's go to the next slide. Thank you. This is a
When the
video
Philippines began
on
building
Mula.
satellites, we started small. As small as a suitcase. Yet the stakes were high and the challenges were great. After the success with 6 of these small satellites, the Philippines is ready for something bigger. In December 2020, the Philippines kicked off the Multispectral Unit for Land Assessment, or MULA satellite project. Weighing around 130 kilograms, MULA will carry a true color camera that can capture higher resolution images, covering around 73,000 square kilometers of our country in one day. Data from MULA satellite will be used for addressing food security, disaster resilience, environment conservation, and protecting our national sovereignty. The Department of Science and Technology jump-started the funding of MULA. The project was jointly implemented by the DOST, Advanced Science and Technology Institute, and the University of the Philippines, Diliman.
By the way, guys, this is a working lunch. So the other agencies that are not being asked, you can already eat if you
Filipino engineers
Doc lang
who
yata hindi
underwent a
makakain kasi
know-how
magrepresent.
training and transfer
Pwede na po kayong
program
kumain.
in the UK are involved in building the satellite and are now part of PhilSA. The training capacitated our homegrown engineers, not just with knowledge, but the license to build more local commercial satellites in the future, leading the way for the creation of a robust and thriving space industry to support the country's space program. PhilSA will oversee the completion and launch of MULA and manage its operations. MULA in Ilocano means plant pointing to the satellite's mission on food security. In Tagalog, it means point of origin or beginning, which symbolically signals the Philippines.
May I proceed, Mr.
Yeah, please, because
President?
we don't have
Go to
much
the-
time.
Philippines
We
Yeah,
have
next,
to-
next slide.
satellites.
I will go
We
into some
started-
detail now. We go to the next slide. So this is I'll present po the current NEP level budget and then the requested augmentation towards the end. So for the MULA satellite, this is now fully funded. We have a multi-year contracting authority. So we're in our second year of implementation of toward 2025 would be the second year of implementation. So you see there the jump in the drop in the budget public simply because of our requirement. This year it's 1.25 billion. For next year, the NEP level budget is 521 million. So that is sufficient, Mr. Chair, and then we have 2026 pa for the launch. Okay, we go to the next slide. Now, I've already mentioned our satellite development activities are aimed at fostering opportunities for local companies to increase the economic complexity of our country, Mr. Chair. Angkop sa kalawakan, yari at tatak Pilipinas, opportunities in local space manufacturing, that's a battle cry for us. Basically, we try to work with the DTI and the Board of Investments. If you click on this, please, so we can show the Tatak Pinoy. This is in support of the Tatak Pinoy Act, which was recently passed by Congress and signed by the President, about incubating and incentivizing great products that deserve to carry the Made in the Philippines trademark, including products for space, Mr. Chair. Next slide. Now, as part of growing the domestic space economy and industry, for 2024, our actual budget is 69.2 million. For 2025, we proposed a budget of 112.5 million, and our NEP level is 28 million. Among the things that will be supported by this budget is a development of another instrument, Mr. Chair. It's a camera that will go on board a satellite that will be shared by different groups coming from Singapore, Vietnam, Thailand, Taiwan, and the Philippines, and the UK. So we will cooperate on this satellite. We will co-locate our instruments into this satellite and share resources of the satellite and even possibly data across these groups. So that is ongoing. Let's go to the next slide. On the downstream, for mobilizing space data for national security, maritime domains, and economic development, this goes back to your question earlier, Mr. Chair, about the use of the data. 2024 actual budget is 83.73 million. For 2025, our proposed budget is 202 million, and the NEP level is only 26.77 million. And what is this for? This is for producing maps from the data for various applications. Since 2022, the start of the current administration, we have produced almost 60,000 maps for the National Greening Program for mapping of flooding, oil spills, and critical areas in the West Philippine Sea. These maps are being used by various government agencies, and we continue to support their use of space data by establishing formal partnerships. So that is what this budget is intended to support. While we continue to use our sovereign satellites, we still use commercial subscriptions and also satellites of other countries that are offering their data so that we can cover our country whenever there's an emergency or typhoon, or to fight climate change and to protect our environment and to foster maritime domain awareness. Next slide. So this is an example of one map that is being produced, and these red dots that you see are ships that are detected by artificial intelligence algorithms that have been developed by the team. And the recipients of maps like this include the National Security Council, the DND, the Coast Guard, and other branches, and the branches of the Armed Forces of the Philippines, Mr. Chair. Next slide. Another example of a map being produced are oil spill maps. This is the recent oil spill in Manila Bay. And this, of course, the output of this went to the Coast Guard, to the DND, to the NEDA, DNR, DOST, DILG, and to the Department of Social Welfare and Development, including the Marine Science Institute, Mr. Chair. So the value of a map like this, it goes into models of the UP Marine Science Institute, so they can predict where the oil will go and when it will reach the coastlines.
Doc, just a quick question. Like, for example, I'm quite interested with this oil map. So this is real-time data. When there's an oil spill, you can, if there's a request from these agencies, you can actually give them real-time data on the oil that's spread out.
we get the data when the satellite passes overhead and takes pictures, which is not necessarily every second or every minute, Mr. Chair. So when there are satellites flying overhead, what we also do is activate the International Charter of Major Disasters. We're a signatory to that. And when we activate that, other countries with their satellites passing overhead come to our aid. And I should also add, because we have sovereign satellites, Mr. Chair, we're also in a position to contribute to other countries when they need help, because we can take pictures over their areas as well and contribute that. So that's another value of having our own infrastructure. But
Would we be able, so we don't have satellites at the moment to be able to do this. We're just utilizing other satellites of other countries.
we have one, we have two satellites that we have access to more or less directly. Diwata 2, and there is a Novasar satellite, which is we're a mission partner with the UK, India, and Australia in this satellite. The difference of the Novasar satellite is that it's a radar satellite. It can see through clouds. So whether it's cloudy, etc., and we're always blessed by clouds, Mr. Chair, so it uses radio waves, it can see through that, and we use that as well for applications like this.
Mula will be able to do this all on its own?
It's an optical satellite. It will be impeded by clouds, but it's primarily because it sees, it measures at different colors. It can detect health of vegetation. So for us as human beings, it's very difficult to identify a fake plant from a real plant, or if there's an onset of disease in a plant. So, but these satellites with their payload and cameras can provide that kind of information, Mr. Chair, and water quality and air quality.
Okay, thank you.
We go to the next slide. Another product that we produce routinely now are flood impact maps. So this is a change detection wherein you have areas that are now covered by water where there is none. So this regularly goes out to the Office of Civil Defense whenever a typhoon or tropical depression comes to our country. So these are account for a majority of these maps that are being produced, Mr. Chair. Next slide. Now, we also wanted to highlight, if you click on that, I think there's a graphic. Please, oh, sorry, go back. I think it's, never mind, please go back. We don't just give out maps, Mr. Chair. We have to accompany it with training. So we have been able to provide around 135,000 person hours of training that accompany the maps. Our model is we want to build in capacity in different government agencies and LGUs, not just to use the data, but to also be able to add value to it and to ground truth the data and give us some information and feedback on the maps that we provide. Next slide, please. We just recently completed a nationwide mangrove map together with the DNR. And this was also launched at the National Museum. So if you visit the National Museum, there's a big poster there that shows the nationwide mangrove map. And this was detected using artificial intelligence, Mr. Chair. And we know that the AI will make mistakes, but then we released it to the public with a challenge to the public to validate the maps. And recently, the President also, through the Philippine Space Council, directed us to engage young people in the schools in validating this map further. So this will enable them to learn about mangroves and the value of this vital ecosystem in our archipelagic maritime nation, Mr. Chair. So this is something that we will continue to produce. Next slide. Of course, producing all this data will not amount to much if we do not have other agencies or recipients acting on the data and with the impetus and resources to act. So therefore, partnerships are key to mobilizing the space data. So from 2023 to August this year, we signed 13 space data mobilization agreements with DNR on the National Greening Program, with NEA on the Accelerated Electrification Plan, with the DBM on Digital Information for Monitoring and Evaluation, with the DA on the Digital Agri Project, and with MINDA on Socioeconomic Development, along with the Coast Guard for Maritime Domain Awareness Monitoring, and recently with the DSUD for urban planning and human settlements. Next slide. This will soon be followed by additional agreements with the DOTR, Oceana Philippines, with the Palawan Council for Sustainable Development, with the Philippine Statistics Authority, Mr. Chair, who is increasingly going to use satellite images to augment and complement the census, with NAMRIA and various universities and the Environmental Management Bureau of DNR. Next slide. In terms of education and R&D, 2024, our budget is 49 million. For 2025, we propose a budget of 179.7 million. In the NEP is 30 million. This budget supports the PAP-GAPI Pan Philippines program, which is a cooperation with Korea, wherein we're able to access their satellite for hourly nationwide daytime air quality measurements, Mr. Chair. This is unprecedented capability for the country. We can measure air quality all over the country on an hourly basis during daytime. But we need also ground instruments to validate the satellite. So that's the cooperation. Next slide. Further, we are requesting later on augmentation because this program also supports our scholarships, Mr. Chair. So far, we have 13 ongoing scholars. And so the NEP level budget next year will support their continuation only, but we will not be able to have additional intake of scholars. Apart from the scholars, this is also Ad Astra scholars. This is also used to support the PhilSA Fulbright scholars. It's a pioneering program with the United States where now there is a Fulbright fellowship that is focused on space, Mr. Chair, and also an internal fellowship program that we want to run. Next slide. In terms of supporting space policy and programs in space, this year our budget is 9 million. Next year we propose 17 million. However, in the NEP is 3 million. And what we did with this budget this year is we conducted the inaugural U.S.-Philippine Civil Space Bilateral Dialogue, which outlined closer cooperation between the U.S. and Philippines on space, on the exchange of data, ground infrastructure, and space policy and industry development. This budget also facilitated the accession of the Philippines to the United Nations Convention on the Registration of Space Objects, and we celebrated the Philippine Space Week with the theme, Yamang Kalawakan ay Likas sa ating bagong Pilipinas. So next year's budget, we hope to use that to support the Philippine Space Week celebration and also to prepare the ratification of the treaty package for the Outer Space Treaty and the Rescue Agreement. Next slide. These are pictures from the U.S.-Philippines Bilateral Space Dialogue. And on the right shown is our Ambassador Antonio Lagdameo to the UN, handing over the instrument of accession of the Philippines to the UN Registration Convention at the UN headquarters in New York. Next slide. These are pictures from the recent Philippine Space Week, Mr. Chair. We hope to grow this further. We're encouraged by the attendance. We had an exhibit at Gateway Mall in Cubao, and we were visited over a 3-day period by around 11,900 unique visitors to this exhibit. Shown in that diagram is an interactive display where we show very beautiful sights of our country as viewed from space. So we hope to promote this further, this vantage point of our country, to Filipinos and also to tourists who come to our country. Next slide. Next year, Mr. Chair, will be a milestone for us because it will be the first time that our space agency is hosting a regional gathering of space agencies. This is the 31st session of the Asia-Pacific Regional Space Agency Forum. And this is already in the NEP for 2025, about 17.9 million. So space agencies from Japan, South Korea, the region in the US and Australia, even up to the UAE will be coming to the Philippines for this important meeting next year, which we will host. Next slide. Now, in terms of socioeconomic, let's skip that. Okay, so we can skip this. Let's skip this na lang. Thank you. Okay, that's our APRSA video. We are gratified whenever we see images like this posted on social media and websites. In this case, Mr. Chair, this is the Office of Civil Defense using a map generated by the Space Agency of a landslide in Davao de Oro. Now, the value adding that the Space Agency did to this map is we mapped the building footprints and overlaid it on the landslide map, which hopefully enabled our disaster responders to rescue lives and to help the people on the ground. So we keep track of these developments, Mr. Chair, wherein we derive the socioeconomic value and benefit from these capabilities.
Yes, Doc, how do they access that? How can they access that? Do they go to your website or they make their request?
We have channels, Mr. Chair, where we can send them the data directly. We also send them maps which are already printed because sometimes in an emergency situation, if you give them a USB, then it's really, they need to respond right away. So there are already established contacts with our group wherein they can also pull data from our servers.
This is not only for government agencies, can also private sector foundations or, let's say, for example, the Red Cross. Because I'm a member of the Red Cross. The Red Cross needs to access data such as this, What would be the protocols for that, Doc?
Well, normally it would be we to contact us through email, and then we respond right away. So there's a group that's dedicated to DRRM, which already has a catalog of these products. And for these maps, these are already products that are born out of maps. It's used by the public, so it's in the public domain, Mr. Chair. We also publicize it on our website and on our social media content, Mr. Chair. Thank you. Let's go to the next slide. We issue advisories of rocket launches from from different countries, and then we see the response of our Coast Guard when they issue notice to all mariners as a result of our advisories. This is yet another example we cite, Mr. Chair, of our efforts cascading to other government agencies who take advantage of the data and act on the data according to their mandates. Next slide. So then, summary again of our proposed budget. We showed this slide earlier. For 2025, 1.5 billion is proposed, and the NEP is 924 million, and there's the decrease. Let's go to the next slide. This is the budget utilization as of June 30, 2024, about 74.43%. Mr. Chair, of course, we are projecting 100% utilization by end of this year. So that's the budget utilization. And next slide, in terms of COA observation, happy to share, Mr. Chair, that COA rendered an unmodified opinion on the fairness of the presentation of the financial statements of PhilSA for the year ended December 31, 2023. This is 3 years in a row, Mr. Chair, that we have received this unmodified opinion from the Commission on Audit. Shown here is a picture of our auditors with us handing over a report. Next slide now. This is the proposed budget augmentation, Mr. Chair. For the project Growing the Domestic Space Industry and Economy, we are requesting 95 million. I mentioned the Mula satellite earlier. That's already funded. Now, there's also an opportunity that is presented to us to build capability on the space launch vehicles, Mr. Chair. In other words, there's an opportunity for our engineers to build these rockets and space launch vehicles together. And this will also open doors for another industry segment of our country and industrial zones where we can have spaceports. Our country holds a strategic geographic advantage for hosting spaceports because to our east is a wide expanse of the Pacific Ocean, and some parts of our country are close to the equator. This can save fuel for rockets that are delivering payload to space. So our objective is to be able to identify areas in our country that can host spaceports as industrial zones. But we need to build the workforce and the manpower for this starting right now, Mr. Chair. So therefore, we're requesting 95 million as part of, this is the first year requirement of a 5-year proposal. And we're hoping to get a multi-year budget for this, which will grow the space launch industrial base of the country. The next one is on the downstream, mobilizing space data for national security, maritime domain awareness, economic development, for acquisition of satellite images, and for fulfilling the nationwide mangrove validation directive, 55 million for that. For advancing capacity in quality of research and education in SSTA, 65 million, which will support new scholars for Ad Astra, about 11 scholars, 5 new PhilSA Fulbright scholars, and the internal fellowship program, 5 fellows for PhilSA under Aspire. And finally, 7 million for hosting the Philippine Space Week 2025. We are concentrated in Metro Manila, Mr. Chair. We want to bring the Philippine Space Week celebrations all over the country. That's this request. So total is 222 million augmentation. And there is one
Before we
more.
go to the other request, on the Ad Astra, which by the way means to the stars, right? Yeah. So we just want to make sure that the relevance of the scholarships that they're taking, that is for space, I don't know what you call space engineers. So what is your background, doctor? So your PhD in?
My electrical engineering and telecommunications, Mr. Chair. I'm a professor in UP. I'm on secondment to the space
Yes.
agency. So Dr. Gay here, my deputy, is in environmental science and physics. So we're both from
Yeah.
UP.
Di ba mga astrophysicists, yung mga astrophysicists, yung mga
There are
ginagamit nila sa NASA?
there
So,
are also physicists.
The astrophysicists are, because the scholars that you're providing, and we just want to make, as my opening statement last week was, we want to make sure every agency is relevant to today's needs. So this particular agency, which is the space agency, want to make sure that your scholarship programs, they're not scholars in entrepreneurship, or they're not scholars. What are these scholars? May I just ask for what type of education they're receiving? Is it in-house Philippines, or we're sending them abroad?
Local and overseas, Mr. Chair. And there are areas, frontier areas like space medicine, space biology, nutrition and wellness. And there's plenty of opportunities for the Philippines to contribute to advancement in science and technology in space, and the trickle down effect on Earth. So it also covers scholarships for space policy and space economics, because these are important areas that wherein we try to quantify these returns on investment and all the impact of our investments in space to society. So that also needs to be studied further, Mr. Chair. So we're covering all those areas. Our mandate is not just science and technology, it's also industry development, it's international cooperation, and also education.
Wala kayong mga young Sheldon dyan.
I believe there are, Mr. Chair. Our
Ano ba
average
mga young
age,
Sheldon dito?
Mr.
I mean,
Chair, our
sayang
average
because-
age in the space agency is 27 point something years old. We're 250 people now in the space agency.
Okay, so what's the next proposal that you're
But there is
seek
a-
augmentation?
I should add, we're proposing a special provision in the GAA. This concerns the Philippine Space Development Fund. May I go to the next slide? Okay, please click. Yeah, in Republic Act number 11363, it is stated in section 22, the Philippine Space Development Fund, there is hereby created the PSDF to be used exclusively for the PhilSA. The PSDF shall be administered by the Director General of PhilSA in accordance with existing government budgeting, accounting, and auditing rules and regulations. The PSDF shall be sourced from the following. A, the amount of 10 billion pesos to be taken from the share of the national government in the gross income of PAGCOR and BCDA for 5 years after the effectivity of this act. An amount of 2 billion pesos per year shall be released to the PhilSA. The entire amount of 10 billion pesos, including any interest income thereon, shall be used exclusively for capital outlay. There are two other sources here, Mr. Chair, which has to do with income generated and gifts and donations, but we focus on this because it's relevant to the GAA. Now, we are proposing a special provision in the GAA in response. When we released the IRR of the Philippine Space Act, we operationalized this fund, and it is to be a special account in the general fund. And so we're proposing the following. The Philippine Space Development Fund, in addition to the amounts appropriated herein and in accordance with Section 22A of RA 11363, the amount of 10 billion pesos sourced from the share of the national government in the gross income of PAGCOR and BCDA is allocated to the PSDF and shall be used exclusively for the capital outlay requirements of PhilSA. Release of funds shall be subject to the submission of a special budget pursuant to Section 35, Chapter 5, Book 6 of EO 292, S 1987. Further, any remaining balance of the PSDF at the end of the year shall be carried over in the succeeding years. So I believe it is time, Mr. Chair, when we were building out in the pandemic, and then understandably resources were going to elsewhere, but 5 years hence, since the establishment of the space agency, we are ready, Mr. Chair, for this, and we are building out our facilities as well in Clark. So that's the PSDF. Next slide. The next slides, Mr. Chair, are just details.
Before we go to the next slide, so what's the response to PAGCOR with your law, with those special provisions of law?
Um,
Have they given you any amount whatsoever?
Well, our understanding, Mr. Chair, is that they remit to the Treasury. When this in the IRR, this was operationalized through BCDA through the dividends law, and also with PAGCOR, the amounts that they remit to the Treasury. So we basically, it's all in the Treasury. So we're following their annual reports, how much they release to the Treasury, and so I think there's been a significant amount already released jointly by BCDA and PAGCOR. So we're basically fulfilling what is in the law, which is to secure this fund for the space agency, and hence our provision.
So I wanted to ask you, are they, because PAGCOR has a penchant of not releasing their share by law, whether it's sports, di ba? Kasi number one complaint ng Philippine Sports Commission yan eh. Na not even, they don't give gross, they give only net. And so napakalit ng binibigay sa sports program. So you can be honest. Do you get that amount, or do they say that's part of the 900? That's part, not even, because this is not even 1 billion pesos. 924. So this is only 10% of what's supposed to be going to you from the DBM, from the PAGCOR.
We understand, Mr. Chair, that the PSDF is separate from the general appropriations, the GAA, because this is purely capital outlay, the one for the PSDF. And to be fair po, during the IRR process, when we consulted them, they gave ways to operationalize this, which they offered. It is in the footnotes of the IRR how this amount is to be operationalized. And it is basically what the one remitted to the Treasury. And so from the Treasury, that's where I guess with the DBM, it identifies that amount and secures that amount for allocated for PhilSA.
It's I don't like these bills because I don't like these laws to be unfunded laws. And that usually happens when you make these new laws and you put budget requirements and budget allocations, particularly tapping agencies, revenue agencies such as PAGCOR. Maybe ask the DBM. Nandito yung DBM, no? Yeah, what's your name? John?
Yes, Mr. Chair.
Yeah, Mr. Castillo. So, ano na nangyari dun sa Philippine Space Development Fund? Space na lang, naiwan. Space na lang, walang fund. Ano yung status nun?
Yes, Mr. Chair. We hereby confirm that indeed PhilSA proposed a special provision, but during the deliberation and discussion of the NEP, it was eventually denied for various reasons, particularly that it will be a rider special provision and that there are some vagueness of the section being referred to and being copied to in the general provision. If we may be allowed to explain further, Mr. Chair. So section 22 being cited is somehow vague as to the manner of allocation between the sources of funds from PAGCOR and BCDA. We don't know the percentage sharing, how much will be given by BCDA, by PAGCOR, for example. So we asked the PhilSA to check the legislative records or the intent so that we can determine the percentage sharing between the two
Well,
GOCs.
Johnny, sorry, Mr. Castillo. It is very clear to me, the amount. It's right there, 10 billion to be taken from the share of national government, the gross income of PAGCOR. And BCDA for 5 years after the effectivity of this act. Hindi ko lang alam, tama ka lang dyan, is it going to be, percentage sharing between both? But definitely, it says here an amount of 2 billion pesos per year shall be released to the PhilSA. So that's 10 billion for both agencies and then 2 billion a year will be released. Pero hindi pa kayo nagko-comply. So is that the problem? Is that the sharing, who's gonna give more?
Actually, aside from that, Mr. Chair, the very definition of under the law, which says it must come from the gross income. We must note that GOCC such as PAGCOR and BCDA have respective shares that is being given to the national government. And it must not come from their gross income because, as you mentioned earlier, they will not provide such. And therefore, the certification that eventually we will require from the Bureau of Treasury to determine how much is already remitted by these two agencies cannot be determined. Therefore, putting it or placing it as special provision will not cure the defect, but would rather make it more difficult to implement, Mr. Chair.
But there's a reason why, with due respect to the DBM, there is a reason why there are special provisions such as this. It's because napakababa ang binibigay ninyo sa agencies in terms of NEP allocation. So, with less than 1 billion pesos, how can we develop a space program? I mean, a space program for the country, whether we're creating more scholars, whether we're building more satellites. Obviously, that's not enough. That's less than 1B. I can name a lot of agencies here who get more than them. Parang napakasayang naman yung talent ni Doc and all this whole team, no? So, ang akin lang dyan is, I believe the Supreme Court has just recently come out with a statement, you can correct me if I'm wrong, or an order or a ruling. For example, on Philippine sports, di ba? Nagpalabas na sila ng statement. This is the actual allocation percentage. Can you elucidate that more? Can you tell us more about that recent Supreme Court ruling ordering the DBM to release the funds for, I believe it's for the PSC or the Philippine Sports Program. Is that correct? Am I correct?
I'm sorry, Mr. Chair, I'm not quite familiar with the Supreme Court case on the PSC. So yes.
I think somebody took it to court once and for all. I think probably the POC, the Philippine Olympic Committee, NSA heads took it to court. I'll have my staff check on that. No? We'll have our staff check on that. But there's a recent announcement by the Supreme Court that said that the law should be implemented to the letter. And this is a law, kasi this is a law. I mean, that's a problem with the Philippines. We have a lot of laws, but they're not being implemented. And that's not the fault of the legislators, but it's also the fault of the implementing agencies. And so in this case, sayang naman yung special provision na ito, na hindi niyo binibigyan ng importansya itong special provision na ito. I understand the predicament of the DBM. You are trying to manage very scarce resources and very scarce or limited income of government, whether it's from the customs or the BIR, and one of the revenues generated by government is GOCCs like PAGCOR and the BCDA. So I understand. Pero yun nga sana, dapat pagdating sa deliberations ng mga batas, dapat very active yung DBM dyan. And they have to be the one to say immediately before we pass this measure that, wait, red flag yan, we can't agree to that unless you're being forced by legislators to just bite it hook, line, and sinker. No? So that's why you should be very active. Like, for example, right now in the plenary, there's discussions on lowering the retirement age for government employees to 56. Right now is what, 65? 65. That's 9 years. You'll be paying their pensions for 9 years. There's a cost implication for that. Can the DBM afford that? But walang umaalma. I don't hear anyone from the DBM saying anything. Kinausap ako ni Senator Revilla Capon, and I just said, baka ma-veto yan. Mas maganda siguro, pakinggan natin yung DBM. I mean, things like that. So, you better I think the DBM should take a more active participation on these measures. Kasi kung I think napasa na yata sa House yan eh. So kung pinasa namin yan dito, many of you can retire already and seek your pensions at an early age. But there's a cost to government at that. Baka mabankrupt yung gobyerno natin. With due respect to all of us who are in government now, yung GSIS baka madideplete yan. As a matter of fact, France had a series of rallies and strikes last year, 2 years ago. We were recently there when we met the Senate President. When I was still Senate President, I met the Senate President of France. Big debate on retirement reforms. Because what they did was from 65, ginawa pa nilang 67 yung retirement age. Nagalit lahat ng mga French. But because they're going to get bankrupt. So that's what I mean by this provision. It just, after almost 25 years being a legislator, it's a recurring problem that these special provisions are not being funded, or these special sections of the law are not being funded. And yet we don't hear, during the deliberations of this legislation, we don't hear the voice of DBM and DOF complaining about it. So I hope that we can hear a stronger voice from these agencies, particularly the DBM and the DOF. Pero nandyan eh. Problema natin nandyan na. Batas yan. And laws should be implemented. So, I commensurate with you, Doc. I feel bad for you guys. That's a lot of money. That'll go to helping your program, at least for 5 years, to jumpstart the program at 2 billion pesos per year. So we'll see what we can do. And when we discuss the budgets of the DBM and the Department of Finance, we can ask them about this.
Chair, we are hopeful, we are optimistic. Of course, we have to be, because we are about the future, Mr. Chair. The space agency has to be, we attend to the needs of the present with whatever that we have, and we certainly whatever that we have, we make the most use of it. But imagine that we can do more. if with these resources, with the young people in the agency. Our constituency is a young people who yearn for science and technology advancement in the country, particularly in the frontier of space. So this fund will go a lot in supporting their future requirements, building for the space agency. Now, just going quickly back to that, when we consulted po, Mr. Chair, it was DBM who offered the solution that this is a special account in the general fund. And we also consulted with PAGCOR and BCDA, and they put forward how this fund can be tapped. And our understanding is that once it gets to the treasury, naghalo-halo na po yun, yung pera. So it's already in that kind of state.
It's called the one fund concept.
Mr. Chair. So then we thought that maybe as soon as, because they do remit certain amounts, and so far by our reckoning, it has exceeded 10 billion over the past 5 years, all the amounts that they remitted to the treasury. So it's just a matter of, I guess, a fiscal space perhaps, but we have to comply in the case of the space agency. We have to be able to implement this law. Thank you, Mr. Chair. The next slide, I'll just run through this quickly. Yes, so actually we've gone over this naman, Mr. Chair. It's just more detail for this know-how transfer program on spaceport development and space launch systems. That's a 95 million. So we're targeting now a rocket development program, starting with a train the trainers program. Again, I mentioned this is the first tranche of hopefully a 5-year program, which will amount to about 700 million for 5 years. But the initial requirement is 95 million. But this plays into the strategic geographic advantages of our country to host industrial spaceports and create jobs and advanced technology in the country. Next slide. This is the amount requested for space data mobilization for acquisition of satellite images, and basically to support the agreements that we've had with other government agencies in continuing to provide this data pipeline for them as they fulfill their mandates in agriculture, environmental protection, in monitoring infrastructure, and for socioeconomic development and maritime domain awareness. Next slide. This is the scholarships request, additional 65 million. Next slide. And finally, for Philippine Space Week, 7 million. I think that's the last slide. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much. And you're absolutely correct. And the reason why I accepted the challenge of this is my first, actually, DOST, and this is my first stint as sponsoring budgets of different government agencies. Because for the longest time I was majority floor leader, so I was the MMDA in the floor. So I'm the traffic enforcer in the floor. But this is the first time I actually accepted the defense of a particular agency. And so when I was given the options and the departments that were available, I immediately chose the DOST and all our science and technology and research and development agencies, because I feel that really it's the future. And as I mentioned last hearing, that I had a trip. I was still a congressman. I was maybe on my second term, and I had a visit to Malaysia, and I have some dear friends in Malaysia, and I was so amazed by Kuala Lumpur, who, by the way, in Southeast Asia is number 2 next to Singapore in terms of best livable cities. You know, there's skyscrapers, there are towers, the Petronas towers, the whole planning of Kuala Lumpur and Malaysia at the time was headed by still Mahathir. It was Prime Minister Mahathir, and he was at that time very well liked, very popular. And I asked them, what was the key to their development? It's really research and development. It's really science and technology. At that time, they were developing cars. They had the proton vehicles. They were developing aircraft. They were developing satellite systems. They wanted to be a global powerhouse as well in science and technology. So this is very important. The Philippine Space Agency is a very important agency in terms of developing manpower. As you said, you need to increase your scholars. We need to have you collaborate with more schools and universities. I mean, sana not all abroad. Sana we can also fund particular universities. You're from UP, I'm from UP. I'm from UPLB. So we're animal sciences, crop sciences. And so I'm a big supporter of that. And I think you should be tapping these universities, not just UP, but other state colleges and universities that see potential in astrophysics or space science. Um, so you'll have my support on that, and we'll hopefully be able to augment. Last year, the Senator Angaro was able to augment your budget. This year, we'll hopefully be able to augment it as well. I just don't know how much the fiscal space that Senator Grace Poe will be giving us per department and the agency, but definitely we'll be able to support some of your requests. Not all, but some of your requests we'll be able to support. But however, before we move to the other agency, and this is also by law, and I think you're aware that on the commission on appointments requirements, last week dumating dito si Senate President Chis Escudero, and he gave me, actually I was Senate President and I was aware of this, but I didn't want to harass you, okay? Because you're a scientist and not a politician. So, but this year I believe Senator Escudero wants to make sure that the letter of the law is implemented to the T and followed. So under the law, which created you, which is 11363, there's a special section that Director General of PhilSA shall have the rank and compensation of Cabinet Secretary and shall be appointed by the President subject to confirmation by the Commission on Appointments. And the reason why they do that, because NCMF, which I created, the National Commission for Muslim Filipinos, also has a cabinet level rank. But we didn't feel at the time that it was necessary to get a commission appointment. So there are several agencies that were created by law that did not require commission appointments. The reason why they required commission appointments of this was probably the importance of your agency, because they felt maybe at that time when we passed this measure was that you were going to be given a large amount of money, probably similar to a department, and therefore you need to go through commission appointments. Anyway, with your credentials, Your Honor, I don't think you will have a problem. I don't think scientist ka, hindi ka naman politician. So I think the best way to do it is to subscribe to the law, and we have to actually implement the law. So I hope you're aware of that. I believe we spoke to ES Bersamin already about it, and they said that they would be submitting your name to the Commission Appointments very soon. I'm a member of the Commission Appointments, so I used to be the presiding officer. I'm the member now. So would you like to comment, Your Honor?
Mr. Chair, just to comment that in the beginning, yes, we did comply. We actually showed up. We submitted all the documents when we were first appointed. However, what happened there is we were sent home because we were told that the position did not need confirmation. But that was at that time. But of course, we're ready to comply with all these requirements.
Legal, because I think there's a legal opinion already by the Commission Appointments that it's subject to the pursuance of Section 10 of your Republic Act. So, well, it's okay. I mean, we all go through that. Everybody will go through that. So, kung kaya ng ibang cabinet secretaries na mas qualified ka sa kanila, kaya mo yan. I think they'll be asking the same questions I asked today, most of the time. So, walang problema yan.
So they cited I think the provision in the Constitution. I think that was the one cited, which then limits a certain CA, I guess, appointees that go to the CA to certain positions only. So that was the reason then given. But of course, we yield to the wisdom of the Congress and, of course, the Commission on Appointments, and with the Executive Secretary is already in touch.
This one kasi particularly is in your law. There's a provision on the law. So, well, of course, this is before your time. The law was created before your time, obviously. So, we'll just comply. And I think the Senate President is insistent that you comply before, hopefully, the budget of your agencies is acted upon by plenary. Kasi, ang punto nila dito is, unless you have complied with the Commission Appointments requirement, you are the position of the Senate President now, he told me, and the legal office of the Commission Appointments, you're in an acting capacity. You're in an acting capacity. And therefore, if you're signing off for your agency's documents, there are, and I think COA is here, no? I think there are allowable things that they can sign off, and they're not allowed to sign off certain things until they are actually appointed. They get their ad interim appointment from the Commission Appointments. So we don't want that. We don't want that. Yeah, we don't want that problem for you. So although you can argue that under the Constitution, there's a certain agencies, but this is creation by law. Matagal pang usapan yan if you're gonna go pa to the Supreme Court and all that. I would just suggest, just comply, and I think you'll be fine. There should be no problem with that. Thank you. So, Doc, do we get your confirmation that you guys will comply with the CA for the sake of your agency?
For the sake of the agency, Mr. Chair, yes, of course. And of course, it's the letter of the law, but of course, we yield to the wisdom of the Congress. And,
Thank you for that, Doc. Wala namang problema yan. Basta UP ka naman. So I guess your SALN is still complete up to date. Up to date. Wala ka naman dalawang asawa, di ba? Yung mga natatanggal dyan sa CA, dalawa yung asawa. Or may mga problemang ganun. Diyos ko po. Anyway, so...
as mentioned, Mr. Chair, we
Yes, sir.
did comply. We complied before. And because we stand ready to comply whenever. Thank you.
Thank you, thank you. And it's for future appointments also. I think you'd like to make sure that the future appointments to your agency are people with, upright citizens and all that. So it should be no problem. I've been in the CA for a long, long time, and agencies such as yourself don't usually have a hard time. So so I now move that the budget of the Philippine Space Agency is deemed submitted. Congratulations. Thank you, and we'll try to increase your budget, gentlemen and ladies. Thank you very much. So you guys are excused. Thank you. Sorry, you didn't get to eat your lunch.
May I just introduce for the record?
Yes, yes,
to
please.
my right, Deputy Director General for Space Science and Technology, Dr. Gay Jane Perez. To her right, our newest Deputy Director General for Space Operations, Infrastructure and Industry, Dennis Villorente. And then the Director of our Space Information Infrastructure Bureau, Dr. Ariel Blanco, also from UP, seconded. To his right is Dr. Mark Cesar Talampas, the Director of our Space Technology Missions and Systems Bureau. And behind me, two more directors, Rolando Martinez is the Director of our Space Industry and Strategic Business Development Bureau. Attorney Noel Riza Castillo is our Director for Space Policy and International Cooperation Bureau. Our planning officer, Jules Howe, and Rosel Vicente, and our budget officer, Jen Gordano. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much. And just last question, do you also coordinate with Pag-asa? And because we're going to discuss their budgets also later this afternoon. So, and they need help, Pag-asa needs help. Minsan sinasabi natin wala ng Pag-asa, pero kawawa naman sila, and we're also augmenting their budget. But I think you guys have to work together for these satellite images and all.
Yes, Mr. Chair, on various fronts, at least on a couple of fronts. Number one, on utilization of space data. So that's something, of course, they use satellites as well for looking at the weather. This is a Himawari satellite by Japan. It's open, it's free, but that can also be further augmented by other data. The other one is the second A in Pag-asa is astronomical. Actually, services. I think there was an attempt before that was to be transferred to the space agency, but that did not push through. So actually, when you think of a space agency, normally think of astronomy, but actually it is Pag-asa. It's in their name. So, but then of course we collaborate with them as far as telescopes and observation systems are concerned. So we hope to further engage Pag-asa in that regard also.
And I hope that we can get you a nice headquarters somewhere, maybe up in Antipolo, in the mountains there or something, that a new home, a real space agency home. Not on in the middle of a building. New Clark City pala, New Clark City nga pala kayo. Yeah, new government center. So any news about the development of that?
That is, our master development plan is going to be completed by first quarter of next year, upon which we will go into the including the detailed engineering plan of our headquarters. So we're building out on a subset of the 30 hectares in Clark that is allocated for us. We're building small first, raising resources for that. So among other things that why we need to secure the PSDF at this moment is because we're planning to build out already in Clark, and that's capital outlay, Mr. Chair. So that's part of our plan. So we're setting ourselves up for that so that everything synchronizes now. So we just signed an agreement with BCDA for our land. So that will host the headquarters, will host some ground station facilities, some technology, business incubation where we can have companies and also students use facilities of the space agency. And
Maybe one day you can launch the rockets there. somewhere in Clark.
Perhaps not
Why
in Clark, Mr. Chair, because it's inland, it's medyo heavily populated, the area. Normally, you go for an area near the coast and facing the east. So that would be a more ideal.
Parang
place.
Apeco, Aurora area. Maganda
Yes,
yan.
in a way that
Oh.
could be, or in places in Mindanao to the south, in
Yes.
southeast po, that's also a good candidate.
Kami, hindi pwede. Bukidnon, inland kami.
Medyo ano po, tsaka
Baka may mahulugan dyan sa North Cotabato. Kawawa naman. But yeah, no, we should look forward to that. I think we should look forward. There are several countries already doing it. I think there's some Southeast Asian countries already launching their satellites. If I'm not mistaken, is that correct?
Not in Southeast Asia at the
Wala pa
moment.
Southeast Asia.
Well, I think the race is on to breach the Kármán line from this part of the world. The Kármán line is that imaginary boundary between airspace and outer space. So that's about 100 kilometers above the Earth.
So Malaysia, they have not developed yet. Thailand, their own. rockets.
Indonesia, I imagine, is the one most active because they're right on the equator. And I understand their leader has been discussing with Elon Musk about certain things, about
Yes.
space and electric vehicles and all of that. So I guess we're in it as well. But we're trying to build this environment where we can have investments come in, take advantage of these, of our country. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you very much. Congratulations, and I'll see you guys soon. If there are any other questions, my staff and I will ask you guys and coordinate with all of you. Thank you. Just be ready when we do this on plenary. They might ask the same questions I asked, so we just have to have bullet points. Don't make it difficult for me, please. We'll prepare the bullet points, and I can read, of course, your answers to their questions on time, real time. So thank you very much, Doc. Thank you very much to the Philippine Space Agency, and congratulations. Thank you. So next, dito tayo sa Commission on Filipino Overseas, CFO.
Yep.
So we'll ask for a minute suspension lang so that we can excuse them. Thanks. The committee hearing is suspended for 1 minute. The budget of the Commission on Filipino Overseas. As I mentioned earlier, its relevance, the relevance of agencies seeking budget allocations from government. We now like to recognize the head of CFO. Sec, you are recognized. Wala ka CA, no, Sec? Wala sa lomo?
Wala po, wala.
Swerte mo.
Kaya nga eh.
Kasi secretary
Kaya
ka.
nakatawa ko kanina.
Oo nga eh. Hindi, kanya kasi nasa law eh.
So wala po.
Kung wala kasi sa law, then we go back to the Constitution.
Yes.
But if it's by law, we have no choice. Right? It's to the letter we follow. But in your case, you're very lucky, Secretary. So please proceed.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Thank you once again, Honorable Senator Juan Mig Zubiri for sponsoring our budget. The Commission on Filipinos Overseas or ang Komisyon ng mga Pilipino sa Ibayong Dagat was established way back in 1980 through Batas Pambansa bilang 79 to promote and uphold the interests, rights, welfare of permanent overseas Filipinos and strengthen their ties with the motherland or the Philippines. One of our major functions is to provide advice and assistance to the Office of the President and the Congress in the formulation of policies and measures affecting Filipinos overseas. We go to slide 6. CFO clientele include immigrants who will eventually become permanent residents abroad, naturalized Filipinos or dual citizens, Filipino spouses and other partners of foreign nationals, and cultural exchange program participants in U.S. and those Europe-bound Filipinos. CFO is currently headed by yours truly. Our main office has just been relocated from Manila to Quezon City, and we do have our extension offices in Cebu and Davao, and luckily we were recently opened a new office in the city of Baguio. We also maintain a desk in the international airports. Our extension, Baguio extension, started its operation last August 8th. This is part of my advocacy to bring services closer to the public. Compared to other migrant serving agencies like the DMW, the CFO provides pre-departures orientation services for Filipinos permanently migrating to other countries through family reunification, intercultural marriages, and to continue engaging them in socio-cultural and economic activities while overseas. I would like to inform everyone, Mr. Chairman, that the top destination countries of Filipino immigrants from 1981 to 2022 were number one is United States of America, followed by Canada, Japan, Australia, and Italy. The 10 origin provinces, areas of Filipino immigrants from 1988 to 2022 were number one, of course, the National Capital Region, followed by Pampanga, Cavite, Pangasinan, and Cebu. The top 10 nationalities of foreign spouses or partners of Filipino migrants from 1989 to 2020 are number one, American, followed by the Japanese, Australian, Canadian, and number 5, South Korea. We would wish to acknowledge the remittance contributions of our diaspora, which stood at 33.49 billion last year. The top 3 country sources include the US, Singapore, and Saudi Arabia. Reference made to our financial performance in 2023 or last year, the CFO received a total allotment of 192.9 million pesos and a continuing appropriation of 3.4 million pesos for a grand total allotment of 196.4 million pesos for year 2023. The actual obligation incurred for the year 2023 is 178.29 million pesos under the current appropriations. The actual disbursement incurred for that year is 177.37 million pesos under the current appropriations. A total of 18.062 million pesos of unobligated allotment for 2023 pertains to MOOE, which can be attributed to the following factors beyond the agency's control. Non-renewal of CFO ISO certification due to the transfer of office, delays in upgrading communication lines due to the ongoing construction or fitting out of the new office, and unavailability of qualified programmers and developers. For year 2023, CFO's total budget utilization rate or BUR is 90.80 for obligation and 99.48% for disbursement. We registered and provided pre-departure orientation seminars to 96,111 Filipino immigrants in 2023.
Before we continue, Sec, magkano yung budget approval, magkano yung budget nyo na in 2024? This is 2023 eh. So, in 2023, you said you got, is this NEP approved o nadagdagan to ng Congress? What was your NEP?
NEP nadagdagan po ng last year.
Yes, sir. Magkano yung NEP ninyo 2023?
Magkano yung NEP natin? 2023. Last year. Last year, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, 2023. Kasi I want to see magkano nadagdagan, kung nadagdagan man kayo ng Congress.
I'll read in a while.
Mamaya pa?
Apo.
O sige.
Opo.
Okay, if you're presenting it later kasi we're proceeding na.
Yeah,
akala ko.
I'll go now.
If we're gonna go back to the budget later, it's okay. You can proceed with the presentation.
Okay, thank you so much, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah.
Okay. I'll go to the program of the CFO. The CFO conducts an annual community education program or CEP that aims to raise public awareness of international migration issues. We administer the operation of what we call the Pambansang Hotline Against Human Trafficking, the 1343 Action Line, the national hotline, as I've said. We handled 37 cases coursed through the hotline in 2023, and 17 cases in the first semester of this year. We continuously provide technical assistance to 32
Wait
Philippine-
slow down lang, slow down. Kasi lahat ng tanong sa akin ng mga senators about your office is the relevance of your office kasi may Department of
Yes.
Migrant Workers na tayo. So slow down, you have to show me what your projects and programs are para pag tinanong sa akin, itong ginagawa nila.
Yeah.
So you started with
The community education
pre-departure,
program.
yeah, okay,
Yeah,
pre-departure orientation seminar. Sorry, mabilis na kasi yung paggalaw ng slides. Okay. And then you do pre-orientation seminars for registration of Filipino immigrants. Okay. Is that a requirement ba to certify that they're immigrants?
No, we are the last bastion of these immigrants. Kano. Bago po kasi sila umalis to live permanently abroad, they undergo the tedious process of pre-departure orientation seminar, guidance and counseling program, and the country familiarization seminar. So that they, when they arrive there, they are already familiar in some way or another about their presence in a new environment.
But it's, huh? Yeah, we want to find, is that a requirement by law?
Yes, it is a mandatory requirement.
If they're an OFW?
No, foreign
Immigrant?
bound. I now distinguish a difference between the MW and the Commission on Filipinos Overseas.
Oh, sige.
Basta po,
Medyo confused eh. So,
Yeah, ito.
okay.
para basic, hindi po malilito ang ating mga maski ibang kababayan natin nandito. Pagka workers, dadaan po sa Department of Migrant Workers. Trabahador po sila and they are called temporary migrants. Kami po ay ang kinikater namin are permanent migrants, yung hindi na po babalik ng bansang Pilipinas. But despite the fact na wala na po sila dito, we still maintain the what we call a filial relationship between their original country and their new host country.
And therefore, kasi ano ako eh, I'm the author of the Ease of Doing Business, right? So,
Yes.
Ease of Doing Business, we went to less government, how do you say, regulation, the
Yes.
better. So, is this a requirement that let's say they're migrate, may kinasal na, ano ba yung tawag dyan? AFAM.
Yes, AFAM, Mr. Chairman.
Usong-uso yun sa ano. Usong-uso na yun sa Facebook yung AFAM. Pupunta sa mga Siargao, naghahanap ng AFAM. Okay, kung nagkaasawa siya na foreigner, okay? And it's time for him to move to the other country. Is that a pre-requirement? Is that a requirement? Is that before pre-departure? Is that a requirement by law?
Yes, there's an executive order.
Can you please let me know the law? Iba yung
Under-
executive order.
Yeah, and sorry, there's the Batas, as I mentioned a while ago,
BP pa, batas
BP.
pambansa.
number 79, 1980 pa, Mr. Chairman.
What is the exact provision dyan, Secretary? Pahanap mo na lang sa tao mo.
Yeah.
Then maybe you can get back to us on that particular provision na kailangan dumaan pa ng seminar. Hindi ko alam yun, ha?
The same is true with...
Alam mo pa yan, Postmaster General, na kailangan mo mag-certify muna bago ka umalis kung may asawa kang Amerikana?
Hindi, kasi it's the spirit behind it, Mr. Chairman, is
Yeah.
the fact that considering that the Commission on Filipinos Overseas mandate is to promote the rights, welfare, and interests of overseas Filipinos. Siyempre po, bago sila umalis dito, they're well equipped of the what you call their
Kasi
future.
may complaints na there was 2 senators, di ko na babangkitin kung sino. Sabi na, bakit sorry I just don't want to lose the train of thought. Bakit pa kailangan kumuha ng mga seminars pati yung asawa? Pati daw yung asawa na foreigner, kailangan kumuha daw ng seminar pag nasa Pilipinas. Is that correct?
Yes, kasi we have to consider the provisions on the anti-trafficking law.
Kasi no, definitely,
Yeah.
yes.
Marami po kasing mga 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 foreigners na nag-entice mag-aasawa ng mga Pilipino. For the fact, ang nangyayari po, pagdating nila sa, for example, sa Japan, hindi po sila that's not the actual na nangyayari. Na-abuse po ang kanilang rights doon, na instead na asawa sila doon, ay nabibiktim po ng human trafficking, instead na maging spouse, ay nagiging white slave trade doon sa Japan. Mga ganun pong pangyayari. Kaya dito pa lang, on the part of the government's protection of these Filipino people going abroad, is at this, bago sila umalis, alam na nila that their rights are being protected na po. Kasi a basic example is yung mag-aasawa po ng Hapon. Siyempre po, bago umalis, may guidance and counseling program. Kung ang Hapon na po yan, ay blacklisted na po, ay na-alarm na po itong babaeng ito, kung sino man itong mga pangasawang Pinay, nagkakaroon na po ng warning sa kanya na yung lalaki na yan ay hindi ang purpose ay mag-asawa, kundi ikaw ay maging biktima pagdating mo sa Japan. And we do have also the anti-mail order spouse law na kami din po ang one of the protection being given to these people ay dumadaan po sa Cebu through a
But isn't that also the function of the Bureau of Immigrations? Parang function
sila po
din
yung
yan.
last bastion kasi
So,
po
last stop sila.
last stop kasi po sa amin with the agreement with the BI regarding the interoperability system with the CFO ay nagkaroon po kami ng parang automatic na nakaline po kami sa BI na from the time na nabigyan po namin ng digitalized certificate in the passport itong mga doon po mismo, pagdating nila sa BI, within 5 seconds.
CFO, yung Commission on Filipino Overseas, this is a creation by BP? It's a BP creation.
Yes, 1980.
So hindi bagong batas.
Hindi ba, it's 1980 pa po, it's already, we will be celebrating the 45th anniversary next year
Okay.
na po.
So, paano mo malalaman na lilipat na sa ng ibang bansa? For example.
Armed na po siya ng visa eh. Meron na po siyang complete na po siya ng mga documents to leave the
As
country.
permanent resident.
Yeah, kasi pagdating po sa BI, pag wala pong commission.
So how would you know that may permanent resident visa na siya? Are they supposed to register to you guys or pipigilan sila sa BI and say you have to do this particular
Usually po, alam na po
seminars?
nila silang dadaan sa CFO. They know for the fact na pag before sila umalis, may CFO na po silang dadaanan. May mga advisory. We have what you call a regular advisory on the matter.
Strange because I don't even know that. I only knew it because one of the senators told me about it. I wonder how you can, paano mo malalaman yan? Is it on TV, radio? Kasi ayoko naman na pagdating nila doon sa airport, i-rebook na naman nila yung ticket kasi wala nga silang seminars galing sa inyo para ma-comply ng requirement dun sa Bureau of Immigrations. Kawawa naman yung Pilipino, lalo kami taga Mindanao. Imagine,
alam na
magbiyahe
po,
pa kami ng
yeah.
Mindanao to go to Naiya.
From the onset, alam na po nila kasi yung mga steps eh.
Paano nila malalaman? Kasi
Usually
tatanungin ako
po
ng mga,
for
ng mga
example,
senator, for example. I'm
I-
asking this for me,
Yeah, yeah.
because I'm gonna want to defend your budget. For example, Dave here, nakahanap ng ako makain siya, stop ko.
Example, sir.
Ayan, Dave, pag may nakahanap yan na maganda, oo, kung ano. Tapos gusto niya magpakasal doon sa abroad. At lilipat na sa ng England, for example. Alam mo ba yan, Dave, na pupunta ka doon sa CFO? Ngayon, alam mo na.
That's what I'm talking
yung
about.
family
Opo.
mo, nag-migrate. They had to go through this.
Sa kasi po nasa, for example, sa US Embassy, may advisory na po silang ganun. They have already the guidelines. Sa
Okay.
Japanese Embassy, may guidelines na rin po sila lahat
Okay.
yan. Regarding marriage, migration.
So the other embassies are actually reminding them.
Actually, those yung mga high...
So you
high-
coordinate with these embassies?
Yes, we do coordinate with them. Tapos meron po mga travel agencies din na reminding them of the...
Pwera lang yung
procedure.
TNT, hindi mo na monitor.
That's irregular migrant na po kasi.
Yung TNT, hindi mo na monitor yun. Mga siraulo yung mga yan. Okay.
Kaya we
So,
have yung
ganun.
classification po kasi we have the permanent migrants, temporary migrants, and the irregular migrants. Yung TNT na po namin tinagal.
Tago ng tago, kasi illegal naman talagang gagawin nila. Hindi talaga magre-register yun sa inyo. But anyway, okay, so this is your clientele. Filipino permanent residents abroad, Filipinos
Yan na po.
naturalized in other countries, Filipinos who hold dual citizenship, Filipino spouses, partners, nationals, descendants of Filipino overseas, Filipino, ang dami nito Exchange visitor program participants, and Filipino au pairs to Europe. Ano yung au pairs?
Au pair, ito po yung cultural immersion for 2 years na
Okay.
may host family po doon na will cater to the need of these Filipino applicants sa Europe. Pagka au pair sa Europe, pagka EVP, Exchange Visitors Program sa United States of America po. Ang kaiba din po ng agency namin, even former Filipino citizens. That's why this we still maintain our tie with former Filipino citizens.
Okay. Do you have offices abroad?
Before we had, now officially the Department of Foreign Affairs denied our request to establish office in Japan, in spite of the fact that we do have already the budget. Pero we maintain the abide by the ruling or the letter of the recommendation of the Department of Foreign Affairs.
Sige, Sec. Please
Yeah.
proceed.
We'll go now to the major programs. As I mentioned a while ago, the community education program, and we have a unique one, the Balink Bayan Project, the Overseas Filipinos One-Stop online portal for diaspora engagement. Since 2016, the CFO has worked with over 50 local government units for their localized Balink Bayan websites and 10 Filipino association overseas. To maintain ties with our Filipino brothers and sisters abroad, we developed the Ugnayan series to strengthen ties with the Filipino community overseas. We do have the Lingkod sa Kapwa Pilipino program. We help Filipinos living abroad donate money and resources to support projects that improve the Philippine social and economic development. Dumadaan po sa amin, pero conduit po kami, but dumidiretso po ito sa beneficiary. But
Okay.
we monitor the program. We see to it that the program is being realized.
Okay.
We also have we are also responsible for overseeing the implementation of Philippine Centenarian Program. Ay yung mga matatandang mga kapatid natin sa abroad na umaabot po ng 100, kami po ang nagiging conduit nila. We also established the Peso Sense program with more than 3 million followers. It is a financial literacy training program for overseas Filipinos at yung mga pamilyang naiwan nila dito.
Sa Filipino Centenarians Program, di ba may batas tayo na mimigay tayo ng 100,000 pag umabot na ng 100 years old?
Yes.
Pati yun binibigyan natin sa
Yes,
abroad.
kami po ang ginagawang daan.
Pero kung may foreign citizen na siya, paano yun?
Kailangan dual.
Dual.
Kailangan
dual.
ma-revert siya sa Filipino citizenship.
Dual citizen, okay.
And one of the beautiful programs is we implement the Youth Leaders in the Diaspora or ULEAD, Philippine Cultural Immersion Program for Filipino Youth Overseas. Maski hindi na po sila, anak na po sila ng mga banyaga, but maintain the, the immersion that they need. Kasi mismo sila ang naghahanap na yung kanilang route. Tapos we do supervise their stay here in the Philippines. And then we have also we celebrate the month of overseas Filipinos every December. The CFO serves as the co-chair of this committee. And then this coming December, we are currently processing the 84 nominations for the Presidential Awards for Filipino individuals and organizations overseas. Since inception in 1991, Biennial Award conferred by the President himself on distinguished overseas Filipino individuals or organizations. Now we'll proceed to the financial performance of the Commission on Filipinos Overseas. As of June 30, 2024, the CFO received a total allotment of 195 million pesos and a continuing appropriation of 14.69 million pesos for total allotment of 209.76 million pesos for the year 2024. The actual obligation incurred as of June 30, 2024 is 82.73 million pesos or 39.44% of total allotment received. And the actual disbursement as of June 30, 2024 is 82.13 million pesos or 99.27% of the total obligation. The CFO has total of 127.35 million pesos of unobligated allotment as of June 30, 2024 due to the following reasons. CFO Baguio Satellite Office, the establishment has been postponed to third quarter of 2024. Tapos na po ito. And then the CFO attaché posting in Japan, the implementation is now officially closed or being stopped by the Department of Foreign Affairs. And then the IACAT Advocom or Interagency Committee Against Trafficking or Advocom, the Advocacy Communication and Communication Committee. The activities related to this IAC at Advocom are being carried out throughout the year. Other CFO activities include the Presidential Awards for Filipino individuals and organizations this coming December. For the National Expenditure Program for 2025, we are proposing 239,979,000 pesos only for the delivery of our programs and services for our overseas Filipinos. Reference is made to budget dimension. For the year
Pero partner,
2025,
proposal niyo yan, what is the NEP allotment given to you?
162.711 million pesos.
Sa NEP, yung lumabas na yun ng DBM.
One, ito. Nasa?
Yan yung NEP? Or is that what you're,
Nasa yung 2025.
Yun na yung 2025 natin. Yung 239.
It's the 239 million. 239,979,000 pesos. Oh, wala na. Oo nga, ito na nga. So it's plus on the screen, Mr. Chairman.
so the NEP that was given to you 2025 is 239 million?
0.98 million. There's an increase in the
That's
amount.
increase.
Yes. The increase in the budget is due to the increases in the rental rates of the CFO's main office and extension offices. Also, the CFO's budget for the information and communication technology projects increases per CFO ISSP plan for 2025 until 2027.
Okay. And so last year, your NEP was 157? Was this correct? Is that a 5? 157?
162.711 million.
Ito, I mean, this year pala, this year. Yung inyong 2024 NEP is magkano?
Year?
Hindi.
2020.
2024?
Itong to.
Ito po, 162.711 million.
Ang NEP nyo.
And then
Tapos,
may sika kami ng 30,534, total of 193,200.
pero yung GAA nyo lumabas 188.
Yes,
So, inaugment kayo ng GAA.
yes.
Who gave it to you? Senator Angara or your sponsor?
Tolentino.
Santol, okay. Yeah. I think I have this. And then 2024-5, the NEP is 239 million. So
Yes,
nadagdagan
Mr.
kayo.
Chairman. Nadagdagan po.
Mhm. Close to 230, almost close to 240 million. Okay. And due to rental expenses?
Rental expenses, sir, Mr. Chairman, and
Anong
the,
breakdown mo dito sa 239?
yes,
Honor, para I
andito
can
po.
see.
For personal services, Mr. Chairman, the provisions of salaries authorized under RA 11466 dated January 8, 2020, for 79 field positions as of April 22, 2024, provision for loyalty pay for CFO employees in the amount of just 20,000 pesos, provision for anniversary bonus, 213,000 pesos. For MOOE or an ad and capital outlay, provision for information and communication technology ICT projects, including the acquisition of ICT equipment and software in the total amount of 101 million pesos and 717,000 pesos. Next slide, a provision for office lease expenses in the total amount of 23,197,000 pesos to cover the rental expenses of Commission on Filipinos Overseas main office and other extension offices. Provisioning for the continuing operating requirements for CFO for the Interagency Council Against Trafficking and Advocacy and Communications Committee in the amount of 4,546,000 pesos. And lastly, provision for continuing operating requirements of the CFO Attaché and Extension Office, now Extension Office na lang po, in the total amount of 8,870,000 pesos. Mababawasan na po ito because of the denial of the Department of Foreign Affairs establishment of Service Immigrant Office abroad. And then last slide, Mr. Chairman, I will be presenting the additional proposals of Commission on Filipinos Overseas for for the year 2025. Number one, the CFO proposes an additional extension office in the heart of Mindanao, which is Cagayan de Oro City, the amount of 7.3 million pesos. I'm now deferring the additional request for attaché, considering it's already denied by the Department of Foreign Affairs. Now, last but not the least, the CFO proposes an additional budget for advertisements of in-airport TV screens amount of 5.9 million pesos. The reason for this, Mr. Chairman, is the fact, gaya ng sinabi nyo, hindi nyo pa masyadong nakikilala ang CFO. I think it's high time to make a public awareness in a what I call a massive information campaign about this Commission on Filipinos Overseas by providing giving us an additional budget for this for just 5.9 million pesos. We assure you, Mr. Chairman, our commitment to support initiatives toward the development of the country and our kababayan overseas. We vow to ensure the delivery of a transparent, honest, and efficient service to the growing Filipino diaspora aligned with our mantra, kalidad ng serbisyo para sa mamayan, abot sa labas ng bayan. Para sa bagong Pilipinas, maraming salamat, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much, Secretary. So, what I'd like to also get from you are on the breakdown of your programs, magkano ginagastos nyo dyan, tsaka ilang tao yung natutulungan nyo. For example, year 2023, ilang tao ilang emigrants, as you call them, were given seminars, educated and went through your courses, etc., and certifications given.
We will provide the exact data on that.
O kasi baka tanungin ako ng mga senador, and then iilan lang naman pala ang seminar nyo this year.
Yeah,
Wala
marami
pang
po.
100.
Oo.
Sabihin nila, bakit ang laki ng budget nan? So, maybe
we
can you
will
present it here now?
Yeah, I can. Slide 20, please.
20.
We registered and provided pre-departure orientation seminars to 96,111 Filipinos immigrants in 2023. And the first semester po of this year alone is 38,205 immigrants.
This list that you have here, so 2019, just to be clear, is 90,000. Balik niyo po.
Bakibalik.
Balik niyo na. Masyado mabilis yung ano mo. In 2019, you had 90,000 registrants.
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
2020, of course, there's a drop in 2020, 2021 because of COVID. And then 2022, umakyat ng 80,000. 2023 is 119,000. That's only for the year of 2023.
Yes, Mr.
Right?
Chairman.
There were 119,000 new registrants.
Yes.
Tama yan. So hindi yan accumulation, hindi nag-accumulate yun. So those are new registrants for that year.
New register.
Okay. And these are all going abroad?
Yes, of course.
Wow.
Diaspora, I mean, permanently living
So
the
in
Philippines.
2023, we had 119,000
Leaving the
citizens
Philippines for
that have
good.
left as permanent residents in other countries.
Yes.
Dami, no?
Actually po, mas marami pong sa number. We have more clients than the OFWs. Sila kasi temporary migrants, may mga umuuwi, nababawasan, may umaalis. Kami po is permanent living. Talaga nag-accumulate po.
This year, sabi mo, to date, what is the number of registrants?
Itong taon po nito, first semester is 38,205 immigrants.
38,205.
So we have yet to give the
June lang to. Till June, up to June lang
June
to.
30. Opo.
Okay. Daming daming gustong umalis sa bansa.
Kaya nga po nag-expand ang CFO under my leadership. Talaga pong nag-expand na po ako.
Oo.
I'm anticipating a major diaspora in years to come.
Okay. That's a big brain drain for the country though, fortunately. So, okay, any other things you'd like to request? So, okay na tong budget nyo. Gusto mo, maintain lang natin to.
Dadagdagan nga po.
Dadagdagan na. Ayun,
Konti lang naman po,
konti lang.
13.2
Oo nga.
million.
Yung
Baka
sinasabi mo, yung para sa ads nyo. Tsaka yung sa CDO.
O yun lang
Taga
po.
doon ako
Kaya nga, supportahan nyo na po.
Maganda yan. Sige. Okay.
Saka yung public awareness, kailangan po talaga yan CFO. Kasi under my leadership, gusto ko, during our time, nung mahal nating Pangulo na si President Marcos Jr., na talagang to bring down itong pong serbisyo sa grassroots level. At lalo na po kung saan mataas ang migrants, yung po mga diaspora. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much. So just give us the other requirements that we're requesting. Break down the programs and projects that you're doing and so that it's clear pag may nagtanong na senador dun sa mga programs ninyo. Importante dyan yung mandate, make it clear and concise.
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
Kasi pag may magtanong, then we will give the mandates. And I didn't know there was a BP. So it's good that you include the Batas Pambansa.
Yes.
That is a Marcos signature, ano yan, no? Marcos
Mr.
petition
Junot,
yan.
no, kasama po si Sir Joe Subiri sa assemblyman.
Oo.
at that time.
Was it a Batasan Pambansa?
Yes.
It was Batasan Pambansa.
Kaya batas pambansa.
Tama. Ano pala yung kay President Marcos yung pinipirmahan na presidential decree. PD
Ay,
pala yun.
iba po
Ito
yan.
Batasang Pambansa pala ito. Okay. And it was not amended by subsequent laws?
Wala po. We are strengthening it now. It's now pending with the Office of the President. Ito pong executive order but still pending.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much. There's no other things that you'd like to discuss. You want to introduce the group that you're with?
Yes, by May, I will with me Attorney Alma Ali from Katbalogan, Samar. And then Mr. Larry Garcia from Bulacan. Marita Apatad from Cavite but originally from Batangas. And then at my back, mga directors po namin, si Rod Garcia from Pangasinan. Miss Janet from beautiful province of Abra. And then, of course, Miss Banji, ayan po, from Nabotas ba? Caloocan. Mr. Myong from Cavite and others, of course, Miss Gracel, sino pa, si Kevin, si Wari, Kat, mga magagandang staff po namin, sila Mabel. It's the CFO team. Karil is there, my media coordinator.
Pwede
From Pangasinan.
Pwede ka ng politiko, Sek. Kasi
Actually, I
alam
ran
mo-
I ran in 2010 in the not so beautiful province of Cagayan.
Oh, that's a beautiful
Yeah, I
province.
know.
Beautiful province. But thank you very much.
Yeah.
So your budget is deemed submitted. Congratulations. We'll try to make adjustments to assist you in your other programs. So thank you, Sec. You are excused. Mabuhay po kayo.
1,000 thanks, Mr.
You're
Chairman.
welcome and
Thank you, everyone.
keep up the good work. Officer Ateneo Law, graduate. Saan ba si Attorney Nel? Yeah. Okay, now we can excuse the CFO, guys. Guys, you're excused. Thank you. Session suspended for 1 minute, but we'll just continue the discussion. I where we have a 5 trillion budget, the income is only little less than 4 trillion, di ba? So there's a 1.5 trillion deficit. We're going to have to borrow that, or we have to bring down the to be able to bring down the budget deficit or expenses, bring down the expenses. So it's really that's the difficulty of lawmaking and implementation of these laws and running a government. It's not as easy as people think. So kagaya niyan, yung economic zones. I'm the chairman of the Committee on Economic Affairs. Medyo stricto ako na yun dahil ayaw nga ng DOF ma-erode ang kanilang revenue position with having too many economic zones, right? So in every province may economic zone. There's a revenue loss on these creations. Although it's supposed to bring in jobs, pero you just have to rationalize it, di ba? Saan natin nilalagay, particular key areas, sa Luzon, ganun. So,
There's
yes,
the charter of PEZA. Actually, they should be the one overseeing all the creation of
Yes.
economic zones.
Yes. Actually, they've
Strategic.
created on their own. Meron ng presidente, si presidente may pinirma na yata mga bago. All right, so welcome to the Senate, to your Senate, dear students. So let's proceed. Let's now discuss Philpo. The hearing is hereby called to order and resumed. We now like to recognize the Postmaster General, Mr. Luis Carlos
Yes.
of the Postal Corporation. I know your budget, you are off budget. In other words, you are GOCC running on your own finances, but you are requesting for a subsidy. And therefore, this is important since we're going to try to get you budget for subsidy. So please proceed, Postmaster.
Yes, Your Honor. Magandang hapon po sa atin lahat. We're asking actually, as you've said, a subsidy or a reimbursement from the franking privilege for the 2025. These are reimbursements from last year, 2 years ago. So we're asking for about 521 to augment the personnel services, including the capital outlays for modernization of the different offices and the digitization of the corporation. So the financial performance of the corporation since last year is about revenues was about 2.5 billion, and we did a net income of about 135 million. This is with the franking privilege or the subsidy of about 546 million of 2021. So yung 2024 po ngayon, we received 70 million from as part of the subsidy, and still working for program 1 of about 476 million. Since 2010, Your Honor, we've been receiving this subsidy as as a reimbursement of this subsidy since 2010, and we're asking for, as I've said, 521 million for 2025. Most of the subsidy or most of the franking privilege goes to 14 agencies of government. About 79% of that goes to the judiciary, and about 10-11% of that goes to the Commission on Elections. They've started already sending 50 grams and below, including registered mails of more or less about 2 kilograms, including the judiciary.
For the benefit of the students here, the franking privileges are the free mailing given by government as a privilege, right?
Yes,
To mail official letters.
Opo.
Yeah.
That's right, Mr. Your Honor.
So, I have the list of agencies here that are being discussed. Kasama pala yung former presidents and widows of former presidents of the Philippines. No? Is that a charter is it by law? By law yung
It's
listahan?
by law.
Oh.
Actually, I just don't remember also yung by law also the capital when it was incorporated in Republic Act 7354 when it was incorporated, a certain capital was supposed to be put up to the corporation. Yun, ando doon din po doon sa batas kanya lang hindi rin po na
Hindi na rin hindi na rin
hindi rin po
comply.
na-apply. Opo.
DPM, you
Sir,
may
may,
reply.
Mr. Chair, we just clarify with respect to the capitalization of Philpos, the national government already subscribed 4.5 billion of the 10 billion, and of which 55% or 5.5 billion should be subscribed by private, if that's correct, sir. And yes, pa.
Well, it's still wholly owned by the government. In the charter, we may privatize, we may sell 55% of the corporation. Opo. It says it may. It may.
May, okay. Yung post office natin, yung nasunog, di ba, I think the first lady has a plan for that.
Yes, Your Honor. Right now, we've finished the detailed architectural engineering study already. There's an interagency that has been put up. A big portion of the will be a tourism circuit for an art and culture. The main Manila Central Post Office will still be there, and hopefully the executive offices will still be there. But the rest will be an art and culture that will be part of the circuit of the tourism circuit that will be enhanced inside the whole of Manila, which is the downtown Chinatown on the northern side. You have the walls of Intramuros, the golf courses, the National Museum. So that's an interagency now, and the chairman now is not less than the secretary of the Department of Tourism, Secretary Frasco.
I heard to the grapevine that baka mag-SM yan, yung building nyo. Hindi naman mall yan. Hindi naman gagawing mall.
Hindi naman po.
Anong plano doon nila? I
We're-
don't know. They don't present to us, so I can of course request, but this might be asked of me in the floor. Yung post office, because we created a subcommittee, we created a committee, special committee here, under my leadership, which was headed by Senator Lauren Legarda, to oversee how we can help you rebuild the post office. But of course, we didn't want to step on anyone's toes. So I believe the president and the first lady came up with an interagency task force to oversee the development of the post office, which I fully support. It's just that what is the plan now? So would you have any idea? Are you privy to the plan on the main building? What's going to happen to the main building?
Going to be restored to its original. But with regards to the funding, actually, of who's going to fund or if there's going to be a proponent, or is it going to be coming from the national government or from the Philippine Amusement and Gaming Corporation, that we still don't know.
So you're not familiar with the
The structure.
But the ownership, I think, will still be under you, right? That will still
Yes,
be under
the-
Philpo. So
yes.
hindi nyo sinicede yung ownership.
Hindi po.
May
we're still
income ba
build-
kayo dyan? Kung let's say private sector leases that, will that go to your coffers, or will
If
it go
that
to-
will be the structure, the deal structure, I believe
Yeah.
we should have some
You'll
piece of
welcome it.
that action.
Oh, of course. Ano, ang balita daw is the Cs daw ng SM ang in charge of that area. So I still don't know what the final plan is, but because sayang, I really love that
Yes.
building.
Opo.
That's a heritage structure. I was almost in tears when I saw it burning in my Facebook page when we were looking at social media. I couldn't believe it. I won't forget that night because I told my wife about it. Actually, that was once a possible site for the Senate
Yes, I
time.
heard.
So, hindi lang natuloy, they decided to build a new building. But we were looking at moving out of here and renting that from you guys and refurbishing it as a Senate
That's the
a Senate building,
building.
the new Senate building, or refurbished, or it would have been a refurbished Senate building. Sayang.
Yeah.
So I hope that we're on track in restoring and recovering it to its old glory.
Definitely, it's going to be restored in its old
Right, nice.
iconic.
Fantastic.
Opo.
All right, so your request is very simple. You don't need to have a long presentation.
Thank
I'll work it out with the chairman of the committee, Senator Grace Po, that these Franklin privileges are important, no, and very, very necessary. But with that said, how were you able to survive with 70 million last year?
Well,
Or this year?
from operations, we have, we're still asking for the balance from the 476 million.
Magkano yung, sige, they might ask us na baka may income kayo to be able to fund this yourself. What is your income for this year or the year to year? What are you, do you have a presentation on your income? Baka may magtanong na senator na,
Opo.
bakit kunin nyo na lang sa inyong income? Yung Franklin
Sige,
privileges.
the deputy
But
for
as a
finance.
GOCC, you also remit to national coffers your I don't know, net income?
If
Or
we have.
if you have.
If we have.
You mentioned earlier you have very little.
Yes.
So, magkano yung gastos nyo, magkano yung income nyo? Sige ma'am, may slide ba kayo para masundan natin? Or sige, banggitin nyo na lang ma'am kung wala po kayong slide.
Yes, sir. Starting in 2022, we had a revenue of 3.2 billion, expenses of 3.7. So practically, we had
Losing.
we lost 463 million in 2022, and luckily, fortunately, we were given a subsidy of 515 million. So that gave us a net income of 115 million. In 2023, we only earned 2.5 million. Expenses total 2.5 billion rather. Expenses, operating expenses of 2.8 billion. So again, net loss of 311 million. And with the subsidy of 545, we were able to arrive at a net income of 135 million. So the pattern is that if without the subsidy or the reimbursement of the franking privilege, Philippine Postal Corporation will continue to operate on a net loss, Mr. Chair. And for 2024, out of the requested subsidy of 546 million, we were only given 70 million by Senator Tolentino. So we are still trying to get
Magkano nabigay niya? Last
70 million, Your Honor.
O kasi pahirapan yung budget na yun eh.
So,
So,
yeah.
so last year, 2024, so with your 70 million,
Opo.
may nakalagay dito, may net income pa rin kayo sa 2024.
This is still the budget, Mr. Chair. So at the end of the year, we may be incurring a net loss again, just like for the previous years.
Kasi dito 70 million lang yung ano nyo,
Opo.
yung subsidy.
Yes, sir. We're still requesting for the 476 million balance.
Nakalagay dito 170 yung subsidy nyo ng 2024. Pero nakalagay 70 million lang.
70 million is from the national government, and 100 million 800,000 is from the subsidy coming from the Universal Postal Union as member country of the UPU, Your Honor.
Okay. Is that added also? Is that added every year? Yung 100 million?
No, sir. It's for a specific project only, sir.
Okay.
Your Honor, for a parcel sorting machine that we can make use of because of the letters are really, ordinary letters have really come down. So we're moving into a parcel business and just what the private sector is doing, we're moving into the e-commerce business. So if we have a good parcel sorting machine, I'm sure most of the private sectors, the ones who doesn't have one, can use this parcel sorting machine.
But this 2024 or 2025, why is there 108? It's also coming from them. They're giving you guys. Mm,
It's gonna be spent next year. So hindi po, we're just doing.
so 2 years, they
public-
gave you a total of 200 million.
No.
Ano to, carry, paano to? Kasi,
We're going to bid it this year, sir, but it's going to be paid next year. We
but
need
you credited it,
to
you
put,
credited it
Apo.
for 2004 na. Naka-credit siya.
yeah, we included in the budget for 2024 because you need availability of budget in order to have it bidded.
So this is the same amount. This is the same fund. Hmm. Okay. We'll see what we can do. Pero medyo misleading ito yung net income mo. Kasi you credited it to 2024, to 100,800,000. And then you recredited it again for 2025. So kung, di ba parang accounting procedure yan, inilipat mo ng 2025 yan, technically 7 million lang yung net income nyo last year. Huh? Is that correct? Or hindi ako accountant, so you can correct me.
This
Yeah.
is Carol. Sorry.
Good afternoon, sir. We're just following the cash budgeting approach. So for 2024, we cannot bid it if it is not included in our budget. And then I think there is a period of I think 6 months delivery. So if it will be delivered by next year, we have to have a budget for it when we pay it. So it's just a cash-based budget. Same amount, yes, sir.
Yes, Postmaster will do our best and we'll make the request to the committee. We'll see how much we can get for that. So, but you know, I will have to stress to my colleagues that franking privileges are very, very important because if there are no paano yun? When you're at a net profit loss, saan nyo kinukuha yung pera? Inuutang nyo?
Not really. Not really, Your Honor. But to be honest, the post has been left behind by the modernization and digitization. So we're asking the Postal Union, just like Japan, who's doing a technical thing for us in the USA to do technical modernization programs that we will have to adopt. So specifically, just like an app of a phone that delivers just like what every private sector has been doing. We're still on a paper-based, on the proof of delivery. So we're trying to move that into, for that reliability comes back to us. And a lot of private sector, the banks can, we can entice them again to come home, to use the services of the post.
So biggest service nyo yung parcels, di ba? Yung mga, those, iba yung FedEx, iba yung all these other USPS. USPS is with you guys.
USPS is part of the organization of the Postal Union. Is one of the member of the 192 countries membership. Po.
So if somebody orders something from the US, brings it here, usually Philpost ang magde-deliver sa bahay.
Philpost ang magdi-deliver.
Okay. Sige, sir. We
Thank
will try to work on your subsidy. I don't know if we can get 500 million. 500 million is a lot. It's a lot, but we will try our best. Who were the ones, was it the House or the Senate who restored or gave you the subsidy of 500 million?
Yung Senate for the last few years, but we went to, I think in 2017, 2018, we were part of Congress. The lower house was the one who gave that. So, but it will really, Your Honor, it will really go a long way because we wanted really to modernize the delivery, including, especially the e-commerce that has been booming. No, it's about $24 billion by next year already, all the way to 2029, and we're not part of that business as of the moment. So we really need those funding just to do some capital outlays, especially the infrastructures of the 1,200 post offices all over the country.
I know. That's a lot of post offices.
Ang problema po kasi the government gave also 100 licenses to the private sector, but everybody's doing only the revenue centers. What is left behind with the post is the universal service obligations to all the far-flung areas.
Yeah,
The private sector doesn't do that because they don't make money there.
yeah.
It's been left behind to the postal administrator, the postal operator, that will do all the far-flung areas, which is a losing proposition.
Yes.
So yun po yung...
That's where the subsidy needs to come in.
Opo.
Yeah, okay. Got it. We'll push for a
Thank you.
bigger budget for you guys. Thank you, thank you.
Thank you.
So, this part of the hearing is hereby suspended so we can make way for the other agencies of the DOST to come back and join us. Thank you very much, Postmaster General and Ma'am Attorney. Thank you to the PhilPost family. Thank you very much. Your subsidy request is referred to plenary. Thank you.